In learning from Ted's material, I saw that tax deeds were a much more interesting way to go. You can make a lot more money on that because as Ted said, I've been involved with putting together his material for years, and that's basically how I learned. Just a little background on myself. I went to NYU Engineering School and got a job in aerospace engineering. I was a missile guidance engineer for General Electric, who sent me to Cape Canaveral. And then I got a job at Martin Marietta and worked on other missiles. And finally pursued another dream of mine, which was video production. And along the way, in '97 I think it was, I met Ted and learned about tax liens and deeds through him. It is not rocket science, that's true. It's actually very simple. In this state, there are two separate distinct auctions. There's explicitly a tax lien certificate auction, which if you don't pay your taxes, there's a tax lien certificate auction. In that, you're only buying the tax lien. You're only paying the taxes. You have no right to the property other than there's a lien on the property to get your money back plus interest. The first auction I went to was with Ted. He brought myself and some other people to an auction in Brevard County, which is the county I live in. And we went to the auction and I watched what was going on. And that at that time, most counties here have gone to online auctions. Back then it was all live auctions. And it's a bid down process which starts at 18%, and then the minimum amount you're willing to accept as interest is bid down to whatever level you're going to accept. I watched what was going on, and then I went home, and online you could research the property. So I went and looked at several dozen properties that I believed were going to come up for auction the next day. So the next day I go to the auction and I've got money. I went to the treasurer's office, put down my deposit, and I was nervous. It was kind of funny because I'd been to video auctions. I spent the part of that camera that's running back there, I bought at an auction and plunked down $11,000, didn't think anything of it. I'd gone to another auction and bought some video decks and plunked down $20,000, didn't think anything of it. But I was excited about it because they were worth a lot more than $20,000. But at this auction, I was bidding on something where the tax lien was $670. And I was nervous. I was sitting there, and I got butterflies in my stomach. I'm all nervous about bidding $670 for something that is like buying a CD. That's how secure it is. And anyhow, I go there and somebody bids 18%. It was an empty lot, and I saw that they were going for about 16%. So rather than bid 17, let somebody else bid 16, I jumped right to 16. There were no other bidders. I got it, and the butterflies went away. All right. To end that story, I got paid back something like 9 months later. I got my money back in 16%. All right. I didn't make any money on that because that was kind of a test to see how the whole thing worked. In learning from Ted's material, I saw that tax deeds were a much more interesting way to go. You can make a lot more money on that because there you go in and you can get something for 25, 35%. Ted's directions, suggestion to me, he didn't force me to do it, but he said don't pay more than 30%. As a side note, he also will tell you that you can, if it's something that's difficult for you to manage and have access to, then you should bid lower. And if it's your neighbor's lot or neighboring lot, then maybe you go a little more than 30%. So you got to factor in the kinds of things Bob was talking about, is what other costs do you have involved in dealing with the property. And if it's right next door to you, it's obviously very easy to deal with. So the next auction I went to was a tax deed auction. The first tax deed auction I went to, I didn't buy anything because I went and researched a whole bunch of property. I was there prepared to buy. I had a pocket full of money. There were two counties I was bidding in. One was Orange County, which is where Orlando is, and the other is Brevard County, which is the county I live in. Have easy access to both of them. And so what I did is I researched properties in the county that I lived in and found, I don't know, maybe 5 that I would consider. And anyhow, none of them met. They all went above the price that Ted said I should stop at, and so I didn't get anything. But a couple of times later, I wound up finding a property, and at the time, the market was beginning to shoot up. I guess you all are aware what happened in Florida. Florida kind of led the nation in some of this stuff, but it did a big run up starting around 2001, 2002, which is the time frame. I think I bought this one in 2000, but it was just beginning to go up. So things were getting bid up pretty high. The particular lot I found had a value, according to the tax appraiser and what research I could do, I looked at what neighboring properties were selling for. It would range from 11.5 to 13. Based on this neighborhood, I figured it was worth about 12.5. And the tax appraiser had a fair market value of $9,000. Well, at the auction, back taxes were something like $1,400, and got bid up to 24, which was my number. And that happened pretty quickly. And there was no, we just went right up to 24. And I didn't expect it to stop there. I was prepared to go to about 3,000. And, well, I got it. And in that county, what you had to do at that time was you had to pay for it right after the auction. Well, I didn't have any money with me, but I had a bank nearby, so I knew I had about an hour from the time I bought it to the time where they'd say, all right, you didn't pay for it, now we got to... So I go to the bank, and I got $2,400, and I go up to the window where you're supposed to pay, and they say, all right, that's I've got the number here. It's like $2,436, because I forgot about dock stamps, all right? I didn't know all the rules. I should have, but, well, it was about $36 more. And I almost didn't have it. I almost didn't. I was scrambling in my wallet, but anyhow, I got it. And then what was I going to do with it? I talked to Ted about it, and he said, well, you can just sell it, or you can get a quiet title. I could have sold it without getting a quiet title to somebody else who was going to deal with that issue, but I figured, well, I'll try and learn the whole process. And so I went to an attorney who would help me with something else, and I asked him what it would take to do that, and he said he would handle the sale and getting the quiet title. I think he wanted $600 to do that. So I went through that process, and it actually is pretty simple, and I probably could have done it myself. It's just a matter of it turns out the fellow who owned it before was deceased, and it was getting his executor to sign a quitclaim deed. We needed a death certificate to do that, and sadly my attorney didn't know how to get it because he didn't have the guy's social security number. And a little hint here that this may be useful to somebody who's trying to get these things settled. Not all attorneys are really good at doing quiet titles. I called a private investigator acquaintance of mine. I said, well, how do I handle this? How do I find this guy's social security number? And he said, well, I can't help you because I work for another attorney, but let me get my wife to call you. I called her, or she called me, I don't remember which, and it took all of about 5 minutes, and she gave me the guy's social security number. So a little hint there is there may be a value in going to private investigators to find some kinds of information. It might be a lot cheaper than an attorney, and they know stuff we don't know. I mean, they knew where to go. She knew exactly where to go to find that information. So anyhow, I got a quiet title. Actually, before I got the quiet title, I got a phone call from a guy. He said, hey, I understand you own this lot. I'd like to buy it from you. I'll offer you $3,500. And I said, no, you're an investor. I know that because we had established that in the conversation. I said, you know as well as I paid $2,400 for it, and that it's worth over $9,000. And he said, yeah, and we talked about it a little bit, and he pointed out something I didn't think about when I bought it. I should have, because I did look at it, and I did walk around it. I did walk on it. I know you're not supposed to do that, but I did. And there was a low spot. It needed some fill. And we figured it was about $2,500, $3,000 worth of fill. So the lot at full retail value with the fill would have been about 12.5. It was really worth about 9. And I said, we just threw those numbers out there, and I said, well, how about 6? You get a $3,000 discount, and I'll make $3,000. Everybody's happy. And that was the deal. And I got a quiet title and then sold it to him for 6. So that was pretty straightforward. It was very easy. And incidentally, at that auction, I had bid on other property too, and I think one of them I had run up to about $25,000 before I hit the break point that Ted said don't go beyond. And there were no butterflies. The point is, you guys have an opportunity here that I had because Ted held my hand the first time, and I could ask whatever questions I had to resolve anything that I was uncertain about. And you got that same opportunity here. It's an opportunity that you shouldn't miss. This is my steps to success. First thing I did was look to places where it was easy for me to buy and sell. And so I looked in Brevard County and Orange County, which was the two counties closest to me. I took the list probably about a week before the auction. I'd look at the list and I narrowed it down to things that I could afford. Pretty much eliminated anything above, even if I could afford it, and I would know that it would get bid up above the minimum bid. So I kept my price, my bracket down to things in my affordable range. Then I also looked at things that I could sell quickly. I didn't want to have anything that I would have to sit on, some kind of obscure piece of property that was difficult to sell, and also have a plan to sell it. The first time I didn't have a plan. That first property I was just talking about, after that I realized I better think about this ahead of time, because if I can't sell it quickly, where am I? And then I would go through, this is all a while before the auction, a week or so before the auction. I'd come up with the full value of the property. So I said, okay, if in an ideal world that other lot was worth $12,500, that was the full value. And at that time I haven't looked at it, so all I can do is go by the paperwork that's on the internet. And in Orange County and Brevard County, virtually everything that you need to know in advance is available on the internet now. Back when I did it, it wasn't. You had to go to the county office and actually look through. They'd have folders. Did you get into that, Bob, yet? There'd be all kinds of information you can get as far as who was notified, was everybody notified, what was due on the property, sometimes any other assessments that might be on it. All that in the counties I work in, have looked in, is available on the internet now, which is very useful. Saves a lot of time. And so I'd assessed the full value of the property, so I knew that that other lot I was looking at was worth $12,500. Also, any additional costs, which I know now I've got to pay dock stamps when I need the extra $36 when I pay $2,400. Sometimes there's other liens, municipal liens or taxes pending, and then determine a quick sale price. If you sell it for 75% of its full value, you should be pretty good at making a quick sale. Anybody who doesn't want to buy something at a 25% discount kind of is missing the boat. So anyhow, those are the things I look at prior to the sale, and that will allow me to come up with what my maximum bid is prior to looking at the property. So in this case, I would have said that my maximum bid was perhaps $4,000 on that other lot. And I don't do a whole lot more research before the auction because, as you're probably aware, a lot of things get redeemed just before the auction. You'll see that on the list that's here. They're well over half are likely to get redeemed. So to go run around and look at all these things when there's only going to be, you're wasting your time if they're not going to have a lot out there. So a couple of days before the auction, I look at the list again, and again, all of this is now online in the two counties, in this county too. I believe everything is online. So you can look at all the list before the auction, see what's available. First time I went with Ted to Jacksonville, we go up to the office, wherever that is in the county office, and there was a page on a bulletin board with lines through the ones that were redeemed. And now, fortunately, that's online, and they usually keep that pretty well up to date. So what I'll do is, of the ones that I have selected earlier, I'll see which ones are still available, and I'll plot my route to go look at all these properties. And in Brevard County, unfortunately, it's a big, long county. It's like 72 miles long. So what I'll do is, start at the top and work my way down, come back home. I live in the middle. So I'll then go and look at everything. And Ted will not say this, but I will. I get out of my car and I walk around and I look through the windows, especially in abandoned places, because I want to know how bad it looks. And I know now to look for low spots and consider what issues there may be.
It's okay to say that you're trespassing, okay?
It's okay. I did it, but nobody else should do it, right?
Because we're capturing this on video. It'd be good to say that you are trespassing at that point in time, okay? Okay, good.
Yeah. But nobody else. Nobody else should do that. And Take a picture, because when you're there, if you've got a half a dozen that you looked at, especially if you're doing it every month or every week, as Bob sometimes does, you can get clouded in your head as to which house you're thinking about, and you might wind up thinking about the wrong one. So now within the digital world, it's pretty easy to have a picture associated with it. Physically staple it to your paperwork so that you've got the picture there when you're thinking about it and bidding and trying to figure out what you're bidding on. You know what you're looking at. And modify costs based on what you see there. If you see a sagging roof, you've got a real problem because you don't know what kind of water damage might be in the house. If you see any kind of other damage, low areas, you might have a house that you have to have torn down. It's not necessarily something, if you find one that's burned out and there's $7,000 in taxes due, and you look at the house and you say, my goodness, the house is worth nothing, and it's got an appraisal, a tax appraisal of $150,000. Maybe the lot's worth $25,000 and it's only going to cost you $4,000 to take the house away, so you may still be a good bet, a good buy at whatever they're asking. You might get it for the minimum. There might not be anybody else bidding. I'm not afraid of that kind of stuff, as long as you really know what your real costs are. Clearly the next step is to bid. If you don't bid, you aren't getting it. And right after you get it, you should start thinking about getting it sold, and that's what Ted will tell you, is you got to move it quickly, because the longer you sit on that, the money's not making anything when the government's got it. So you don't get paid till you sell. I know a lot more about selling quickly now than I did when I bought that first lot. My advice to being successful, do it.